Hey, welcome. Good evening. Welcome to Captive Audience. I'm Sunny Danforth in Northeast Oregon in Umatilla County. And I'll tell you, it is warm today. A beautiful, warm day. And I'll tell you why I don't mind the warmth, because yesterday at our house, we got a new air conditioner and a furnace too, actually. The whole system had to get replaced because it died on Memorial Weekend, but they were able to keep it running until now. And I'm so thankful because we are to get into the triple digits very, very soon. When I just looked, it was, I think, 93 degrees outside. It actually feels very nice. It's dry heat, but nice in the shade, I might add. But it is, so I'm glad to have a new air conditioner, and I didn't have to wait 2 weeks to get it because everybody was going on vacation. So it was like now or never. And the company did a great install all in one day. I mean, not even the full day. So I was very happy when I got back home from testifying in Salem yesterday that the house was nice and cool and everybody was happy. And things were going well. So yes, yesterday, three of us drove to Salem to testify for Senate Bill 1034 dash an amendment to Senate Bill 1034, and the amendment is a -3. Hey, Lori. And it was in the Senate Committee on Rules is where we were testifying and hoping that it would come out of that Rules Committee. And it was interesting being there. I didn't realize all of the things that were on the docket that day. And so they heard 2 or 3 different bills and arguments on bills that had to do with the water rights here in Oregon. That was very interesting listening to. The senators were speaking about repercussions. I will say that the Vice Chair, Senator Bonham, asked some pretty good questions regarding this. And in fact, one of the most poignant ones had to do with this bill was going to affect water rights from 1909 to present day. And he said, are there older water rights? And I don't recall who he was asking that was, but somebody who was testifying, and they said yes. And maybe it was the head of the state agency overseeing water. And he said, yes, there's some from like 1848. And Senator Bonham says, are they going to be affected? And then the gentleman says, yes, they will all be affected. And it has to do with metering. It has to do with some language in one of the bills that said that, they want to look at, and I'm not super familiar with this, so I'm just going off of memory of what I heard yesterday. Senator Todd Nash had spoke about these bills and said, we need something measurable. He says there's language in there that says if it affects streams that are affecting the fish, essentially, okay, the salmonids. He says, I could go take a tablespoon and take some water out of the river, throw it over my shoulder, and I have affected the flow of the stream. So what's measurable in that? And I thought that was really good, because how do you measure? It's one thing to say a blanket statement, but what are they looking at? And there apparently wasn't any recipe or formula to measure just how much a stream or river might be impacted. And, I feel this is very much a huge overreach. In fact, it was interesting the spotted owls of Wales. You got that right, Lori. But to list them say, like this the governor plopped this down and said, we're going to do this. And they go, where did this come from? Nobody's asked for this. Like nobody, in fact, one of the senators says, I cover a big district, and it might have been Senator Todd Nash. I can't remember all the testimony that I heard. I heard a lot of testimony yesterday. And he says, not one of my constituents has said, let's work on this. And so he says, I thought that was a pretty good line. I'll tell you, you might want to go and look at, it was at 1 o'clock. All the hearings started at 1 o'clock in the Senate Committee on Rules. And you'll be able to see the testimony having to do with the wells and that. And some things got passed right out of committee and others necessarily did not. In fact, the bill that that I went to testify on behalf of, in support of, has to do with FSEC, Energy Facility Siting Council. I talked about this on Wednesday. So now I'll give a little recap that FSEC, Energy Facility Siting Council, has overrode the local ordinances of Umatilla County in citing a particular project. And it didn't have to be like that. In fact, when the SAG, the county has, I'm trying to think of what the acronym SAG, sorry, I'm not thinking of it, but they are an advisory group, that stakeholder advisory group, which is part of it is the county commissioners and our land use department in our county in Umatilla County. And for when then FSEC is going to cite something in our county, they give some input. And sure enough, they gave the input that, well, we have this ordinance and we would like that to be recognized and followed. It's not about shutting down projects. It's not about, delaying the process and causing it longer to get permits. And that's what the other side testified on. They said, no, this is to stop projects, stop development of green energy. In fact, one person, a proponent, actually not a proponent, I was a proponent for the measure, the amendment, but an opponent had said, we will never get to the net zero, the 100% use of renewable energy here in Oregon if this passes. That's a complete lie. And hopefully the senators and the committee members will actually look into that and see that it was a complete lie. I don't know. It's amazing too. I've been in a lot of hearings, not just over in Salem, but in our county. And I have witnessed lawyers lying, developers lying blatantly to committees. So it does not surprise me. It does happen. And the committee members need to be wise enough to see through that. It was a long day. I'm glad we went. We had a good group of people that were supporting it, not just in person, but online. And we'll see what the outcome is. I'll let you know. I hope it passes. One of the people, I'm sorry, I don't know his name. And he's the vice chair of the Eastern Oregon Counties Association. And he gave some pretty quick testimony. I believe it was him that had said this. He says, I'm going to be real brief here. He was in his car, and I'm just so glad that he did speak. He says, what happened in Umatilla County is no different of the federal government coming into Oregon and saying, we don't care about what your laws are. We're just going to do what we want to do. We're going to force you to do it this way. And he says, the state wouldn't like it. The governor wouldn't like it. And that's exactly what happened in Umatilla County. So let's just follow local counties' ordinances, have the agencies follow them. It's just part of the process. And let's move forward. I yield my time. Everybody was given 90 seconds to speak. Although those like us that traveled over 100 miles, they actually, I will say, they respected the time commitment and they forgave them that 90-second. And many people went over their time. And I was glad to see, of those people that traveled over 100 miles, I was glad to see that the chairman of the Senator Jama, that he allowed them to finish their point that they wanted to make. And yeah, they are overdosing on power abuse, and we're going to go into that. CJ, I don't know who that is, so I can't answer. I don't know who CJ is. So one of the first things I wanted to cover is, and I kind of have a conflicting story here. Senator Beauchart Davis had, this is from her, submitted from her yesterday, says that she votes on protecting girls in sports. That's great. And she said that yesterday, she had joined House Republicans in calling for an immediate vote on House Bill 2037, critical legislation that would ensure girls and women's sports in Oregon remain reserved for female athletes. I have no problem with that. I support that totally, but I have another story here that is from Oregon Live, and it says Oregon House Republicans fail to force a vote on limiting transgender girls and boys sports teams. And both the stories were published yesterday. One was updated at 4:53 p.m. Now, this one from Oregon Live with the title that I just read you, when you get down to about the third paragraph, the actual headline is there. And that headline is that on House Bill 2037, sponsored by 15 House and Senate Republicans, was assigned to the House Education Committee. But the committee's Democrat chair never put it on an agenda, killing it. So while they might have, maybe she voted on it in committee to advance it, but it never got assigned to on an agenda. So I don't know how one can vote for it and yet it doesn't get on the committee to actually go for a vote. And that headline, the headline is not that the Oregon House Republicans failed to force a vote. The headline is the Democrat chair never put it on an agenda, killing the bill in the House Education Committee. That is it. The Democrats killed it. So you want to know what happened? That's it. The Democrats killed it. I'm glad the Republicans are supporting it, but and I'll post a link to both of these stories in there because I'll just back up what I'm talking about from the articles that I am citing. And so I was just kind of, when I go, wow, here's two different headlines on the same day and contradicting each other. I report and you decide on that. That's crazy. And it's even crazier that we are having forced to have this discussion on boys being in girls and women's sports. This is about women's sports. This is about chromosomes. It's not about mental illness and boys pretending and wishing that they were girls so they could actually win an award and go, oh, hooray, look, I broke all the records. Well, yeah, go compete with the boys and see how many records you break. Not going to happen. Well, things are not looking really good in some other areas of Oregon. In 2022, parking in downtown Portland cost $2.20 for an hour. Starting in July, it's going to cost you $3.60. This is from KGW 8. And so Mayor Keith Wilson says that PBOT, Portland Bureau of Transportation's funding system, is fatally flawed. So New or higher fees are on the table to fill in the widening road maintenance gap. And I will tell you, Oregon doesn't have an income problem. It has a spending problem, and where the governor and the legislatures decide in the budget process decide to spend the money. And in cities, it's where they decide to spend the money. Let's see, Portland. Oh, we're going to pass out tents. We're going to give them foil and drug paraphernalia to help them. We're going to even provide a little cubicle they can go in so they're not in the public eye to do their drugs. Oh, but gee whiz, now we have to raise parking fees because, we actually have a budget hole, a big hole. Coming to Portland soon. It's too bad. And so starting July 1st, $3.60 an hour. Ouch. Ouch. If still anybody who works in downtown Portland, which I'm sure there are, it's cost them a lot to park. It does. And is taking public transportation safe? Are you going to be exposed to some drugs or violence by taking that public transportation? It's not looking good there. Well, in a different story, the Senate House Republicans release a rival transportation bill on no new tax because and this story is from yesterday. So the House and Senate Republicans release a transportation bill to refocus ODOT, prioritize spending, and no new taxes. But sadly, I have another story that is from that first story was also from the Oregon Catalyst. And it was a statement that was issued from the Oregon House Republican office yesterday. And today we have an update from the Oregon Catalyst that 100% gas tax hike, a kicker debate, and gun bill. So a group of Democrat on the massive transportation tax package, a group of Democratic senators and representatives introduced their billion-dollar transportation package, and it includes a 100% gas tax increase, which means it would go from its current 40 cents a gallon to 80 cents. Oregon already has a gas tax that is in the top 10 in the nation. It would also has a 50% DMV increase. This would be an increase on vehicle registration fees. It's by DMV, a 400% wage tax increase. 400%. That means that's less money in your pocket. There is currently a transportation payroll tax on Oregon wages. Transportation payroll tax on Oregon wages, and you would get a 400% increase on that. A payroll tax would increase from 0.1% to 0.5%. It's a staggering increase, step increase until completion. It's a staggered step increase until completion in 2032. So 7 years. We're in 2025. Even worse, this big increase would go to transit costs, not roads. A new tax on new and used cars. Well, with a Democrat-controlled Senate and a Democrat-controlled House, which bill do you think? The Republicans' no new tax, let's prioritize the spending? Or the Democrats, we're going to tax the hell out of you, and yeah, we don't really care where we're spending it. It's not going to go to roads, by the way. Your guess is as good as mine, but I have a feeling it's the Democrat plan through and through. This is why elections matter. Absolutely why elections matter. Lori, Idaho's looking good. Well, today I'm going to speak to that just a second. Today I heard that I don't know where this came from, but three Oregon senators said, Idaho is looking a lot better. Maybe that's what we need to do because the eastern side of the state is really tired of the west side and what they want to do. So, hey, let's have that conversation. I'm all for having the conversation. And on social media today, I believe it was on Facebook, I was waiting at an appointment, looking on my phone, and there was this map, and it is like over half of Oregon. Actually, it's at the Cascades, from the Cascades east going into Idaho. I think that sounds pretty good. I'm just saying. you know you hurt people enough, that's what they'll want. That's absolutely what they'll want. Well, here is a story. This is from Coin. A Salem career criminal sentenced for selling drug infused Cocoa Puffs and Cinnamon Toast Crunch bars. This guy was pretty brilliant, actually, or I won't say brilliant, creative in his drug manufacturing. He actually distributed this locally and nationally. So this guy was sentenced into prison on Wednesday after leading an illegal operation that manufactured and sold drug-infused cereal and candy. The U.S. Attorney Office for the District of Oregon announced, and he was Jared Hayward, 45 years old, was sentenced to 13 years in prison after previously pleading guilty to conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute more than 1,000 kilos. A kilo is 2.2 pounds of marijuana and conspiracy to launder the proceeds. Hayward additionally agreed to forfeit assets worth more than $2 million. He led a large-scale THC and psilocybin production facility headquartered in Salem. Wow, right? And the edibles, so as part of it, he had his employees infuse or sprayed cereal and candy with potent THC oils. The edibles were placed in packages that looked similar to legitimate food products, marketing them as the Cinnamon Toast Crunch Crispy Bars, Fruit Loop Crispy Bars, and Cocoa Puff Crispy Bars. I can see this being pretty popular. And he sold them in the United States and internationally. Authorities said there was no evidence he was marketing towards minors, but said the way the edibles were packaged posed a risk to children who are often unable to comprehend fine print warning on THC products. I wonder if any of these were sold in some of the stores that are all dotted all over Oregon. I have no idea. But he didn't have any permits, of course, or licenses or to produce or sell the products. And let's see. As part of the guilty plea, he agreed to forfeit his Salem production facility, over $1 million in cash and $640,000 in cryptocurrency and bank account funds, and more than $400,000 worth of gold, silver, jewelry, Rolex watches, 12 vehicles, 2 UTVs, and boats, and 13 years in prison. I wonder if they could tie anybody to overdosing or anything like that to that, because I really believe those that are selling drugs, illicit drugs, it's is a attempted murder charge too tough? The fentanyl people are definitely doing it. Now, he wasn't doing that. Okay, he wasn't doing that. It was marijuana, and it sounds like, and psilocybin, so psychedelics, and THC. I don't know. Is that too tough? I don't know. Yes. And vote by mail. You know, that petition's going to be coming out. I saw a post from Ben Edel. I don't know if I saw the post yesterday or today, but the printing presses are rolling, and those petitions are going to be getting out there to start gathering signatures for the end vote by mail, demand voter ID. That's a good thing in Oregon. You know, ever since there was vote by mail, there's never been a Republican governor elected, it's you have to clean the voter rolls. You absolutely do, and in-person voting. You know, in-person voting with ID and not machine counted. I think that's the answer. So I look forward to. I hope that they are able to gather enough signatures. It's going to be something like, I think they need, in order to have a buffer like 160 to 170,000 signatures, to have enough buffer that enough qualified happen. You must be a registered voter. Doesn't matter how you're registered, but you must be a registered voter in order to sign a petition in Oregon. So if you voted and you got a postcard in the mail that said, hey, your signature didn't match, you are still registered, but it's actually, they're going to change you. If you didn't go and fix that, they're going to put you as a inactive voter, and an inactive voter can't sign a petition. So, and if you didn't receive a ballot, that's more than likely you're not registered to vote. People that are registered to vote that haven't moved, you know, if you've moved and you didn't re-register, then your ballot went to wherever you lived. If you, after you move, you need to update your, I'm kind of tired tonight, update your voter registration form for where you currently live, and then you get a ballot. So and you can always look it up and see if you are registered to vote. Go to the Secretary of State under voter registration, and you can register right there. Although I wouldn't do it electronically, I would do it. There's a form you can actually download, print, and fill it out. Check your voter status. Exactly. Check your voter status. Because if you want to help make a change or sign petitions, there's always petitions every year. You need to be an active registered voter, and you can take that responsibility by checking your own voter status beforehand. Just a tip. We're into tips around here. Well, the Oregon legislature passes the Power Act. And this story is from yesterday. It was updated at 5:18, and this is OPB. And this Power Act is targeting industrial energy users like data centers. And the bill that aims to require large energy users like data centers and cryptocurrency businesses to pay their share for electricity use is headed to the governor's desk to be signed into law. We'll see. So on Thursday, House Bill 3546, or the Power Act, short for Protecting Oregonians with Energy Responsibility, leaped the final hurdle after the Oregon House Representatives voted to send it to the governor. And so we'll have to see what happens. These data centers, if you've been following national news, for example, Meta, Facebook, and Google have said, Meta, I think it was Meta that said, would like to invest into 3 Mile Island to start up one of the reactors, and we will purchase all the power from that reactor. So they're actually looking for very reliable, affordable energy. And here in Oregon and in Washington, they buy hydropower. These data centers buy hydropower. Hydropower is very reliable and very affordable. And then the rest of us people are stuck with like the leftover, which would be the alternative energy that gives you brownouts, blackouts, and the unreliable so-called green energy. So for an example, in this article that is from OPB, it says, according to the Citizens Utility Board, large industrial users like data centers that have connected to Portland General Electric system pay about 8 cents per kilowatt hour, and which is the unit of energy when used when 1,000 watts of power are used in an hour. Residential customers on the same PGE system pay close to 20 cents per kilowatt hour. And I can tell you, I live in a community that I think it's more like 6 to 8 cents when I first moved here 13 years ago, that's what we were paying. That's what we were paying. The city, we have our own utility, bought it for less, of course. And it was inexpensive power. Today, it's not like that, because even though the greenies and those that say we must have renewable energy and think solar and wind, industrial wind turbines are the answer for that, those are the two most expensive types of power that I know about. And they say, oh, but it's all come down in cost. That's because it's so heavily subsidized. If there were no subsidies at all, like the state of Oregon pays a subsidy to these developers. Oh, yeah, please develop this stuff. And it's breaking our state. Truthfully, it's breaking our state. And if there were no subsidies, it wouldn't happen. That's why in Oregon, in fact, here in Umatilla County, was the first sited wind turbine. And there was a place that they decided to put it. They designated this is a wind turbine section. And they developed it. And that was so many years ago. It never got developed because there is no money in it. It was a study. And let's see how much it produces. Let's do a study. Well, had it been really viable, it would have, utilities would have been doing it. And without the subsidy, it's just not viable energy. So this bill creates new classifications for data centers, cryptocurrency, and other large industrial energy users that use more than 20 megawatts or 200 million watts of power to pay for their share of electricity and costs. 1 megawatt could power between 400 and 1,000 homes, depending on the power source. Oh, yes, that power source. The power source is very important. If it's not reliable, it's not worth much. And solar and wind are not reliable. And also the electricity consumption within the home. In fact, I'll go back to this new air conditioner and furnace that we bought. I got a couple of bids, and I asked each of them, I said, I want to know, first of all, is the equipment that you use made in America? One company said no. One company said yes. And then the company that I asked each of them, is this smart equipment? Is it, does it talk to, oh, sure. One company said yes, it has all kinds of capabilities. And the other company said no. This has no bells and whistles. It's not going to talk to anything. There is nothing in there that does that. And I said, that's the one I want. So we bought the American-made, dumb, and I like dumb appliances. I don't want to look on my phone on an app and see what's in my refrigerator. No, thank you. I'm not a person for that. And it's not that I'm against technology. That's my preference. There's enough fingers with getting listened to with our phone right here. And it's amazing the conversations you have. And then what pops up in your feed, whatever you were just talking about, wanting to investigate new air conditioners and whatnot. So I don't know how you all feel about that. I would be interested to know, smart appliances or dumb appliances. Some people I've got a really good friend who likes, he's a techie guy, he and his wife, and they have all these techie things and in their house. That's just not for me. I don't need to operate my lights from my phone, or let me start the air conditioner now, or now I do use the remote control to start my car, but that's not on my phone. That's on the key fob. That's a handy thing, especially in the winter, right? But that's not so much I guess it's a type of a smart thing, sort of, but I'm not into smart appliances. I just don't want things, a water heater. I want a dumb water heater. Yeah. Kind of the dumber the car, the better in some regards. Having a backup camera is quite nice. You have all the GPS you need right here. I called me up. Well, I'm a little more old school, I guess. I'm just kind of old school that way. And that's all right. So we'll see if the governor signs this, because where I live over here in Eastern Oregon, data centers, this is like data center haven. They need water to cool, and they need low cost power. So they've put them next to where the hydro dams are. So they are easily connected to hydropower, and they are buying hydropower, guaranteed. They are not buying, oh, sure, they might say, yes, we do have a portfolio. They can buy green shares and say, yes, we're using green energy. It's a farce. This whole thing. Oh yeah, we're green. It's a farce. So I'm going to be interested to see if the governor actually signed this, because the data centers offer a lot. I will say they are paying into communities, but they're also, now you're talking about billions, multi-billion dollar companies that are getting huge tax breaks to put them here in Oregon. So you're not getting the tax break for a number of years, but these companies are paying things into like giving counties, they have these SIP agreements, and give counties money for grants and improvements, and communities as well, especially the communities they're in. Data centers don't provide too terribly many technical jobs. They do provide a lot of security jobs, though. There's, and the jobs do add up. I'm not against having more jobs. It'll be interesting, I think, to see if the governor signs this bill or not. We have some good news. We'll see if it it has passed. Actually, we'll see if the governor signed it. This is out of Oregon Live. The Oregon lawmakers approve higher compensation for ranchers whose livestock is killed by wolves. And this was yesterday. This article was published yesterday. I'm going to post a link to that. Let's see, GPS is handier than printing pages of the Thomas Guide. Oh, no kidding. Boy, do I remember the Thomas Guides. I used to, when I was in business, the thing lived in my car, or my truck, actually. And Thomas Guides got you everywhere. And it is handier. It's actually safer, too, because your GPS will talk to you. Your GPS will tell you, okay, turn at the next second street, turn left and whatnot. And so it talks to you that you don't have to look down at that map. That's pretty handy. I think that's handy. So the good news is they are with these wolves. If she signs it, this is Senate Bill 777. Ranchers will receive up to 5 times the market value for calves sheep, or goats that are injured or die from wolf attacks. And that might sound like a lot, but I will tell you, I've got rancher friends that have been had a lot of depredation from wolves, and for every confirmation of a wolf attack or kill, there's others that go unconfirmed. So for me, I am, and the lengths that these ranchers have to go to protect their cattle. Now, one of the arguments in this article says, oh, but if you compensate them that much, then they're not going to work so hard to deter the wolves. Baloney. You know what? They are going to deter the wolves. They want their cattle, or their livestock, whatever it is. Now, the state would use lesser multipliers for mature cattle or working dogs and other livestock. Why is that? Because a mature, a cow that might that can still reproduce. You've now just lost an animal that might weigh 1,500, 1,200, 1,500 pounds, but it's not producing any longer. And you have invested all this money in raising it to this level. So I don't know that I agree with that, but the wolves definitely go after the calves and the younger ones, the smaller animals, but not just like that's it. They go after, they kill those working dogs and goats and sheep as well as cattle. So but it's a move in the right direction. Let's see. The Oregon House passed the bill Tuesday with a bipartisan group of lawmakers, 44 voting in favor, 12 Democrats voting against. Surprise, surprise, roll your eyes. And the proposal has now passed both chambers, marking it a likely win for ranchers and a setback for animal rights advocates. I don't think so. And so I hope the governor signs it. It is I do. I hope the governor signs it. Our ranchers that help feed us, this is food for people all over, not just in Oregon. It's food for all over the United States or even abroad. And the ranchers need to be compensated. I'm all for it. I hope you are too. Well, there is this article from the Epic Times. They're looking at this story is alleged CCP influence operations involving paid protesters in New York. And there's new protests coincide with the CCP's intensified persecution campaign against the religious group Falun Gong, and the tactics are used by the CCP to influence public perception in the United States, and they appear to be evolving. So, would that surprise me? Heavens, no. How many paid agitators have we seen through the Antifa protests, through the BLM protests? You can go back to the what was the square? It was was it in DC or New York that it all started, and they had a square. This has been going on a long time and paid. How much of this has all been CCP influence? Not just against the Falun Gong. I don't know. I'm just asking a question. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that one. But it does not surprise me that the CCP. So the Epoch Times has documented that these activities have raised concern among observers about foreign influence operations in the United States. On May 9th, a small group of fewer than 10 individuals, primarily non-Chinese, showed up near a human rights parade organized by Falun Gong practitioners in New York City. And the group held banners and distributed materials that appeared to echo the anti Falun Gong propaganda found in Chinese state media. The materials were written in English, of course. A Chinese man wearing a lime green jacket filmed the group throughout the event and at times appeared to give instructions to the others, the Epoch Times has observed. And an Epoch Times freelancer reported overhearing a police officer ask one protester, a black man, if he was paid to participate, and the man responded, "Yeah, $200. Sure, why not?" The officer turned to colleagues and said, "I told you they were paid." There you have it. In fact, were there paid people on January 6th? You bet they were. You bet they were. Were they also from being influenced by the CCP? I don't have an answer to that. But I know that there were paid people on January 6th that helped to set that whole thing in motion after the peaceful talk that Trump gave. Well, we have some good news. And then I have a couple of public service announcements. The good news is the Supreme Court sided with DOJ in Social Security records cases. Of course, three of the three justices dissented from the court's two new rulings. So the Supreme Court handed DOJ two big wins today, late today, in its effort to reduce the size of the federal government. One order removed a block on DOJ staffers assessing sensitive data at the Social Security Administration. I'm so glad. We're still winning. And let's see, which ones would you like to guess dissented? Let's see, Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson, Ketanji Brown Jackson. Yes, those three. Well, at least nobody else did. I'll leave it at that. So the other new order is that DOJ in U.S. DOJ Service v. Crew formally blocked lower courts requiring DOJ to respond to FOIA requests in a pending lawsuit. And the order had come after Chief Justice Roberts on May 23rd issued an administrative stay temporarily blocking the lower court orders. And so now it's been, they don't need to pay attention to that. So that's a great win for DOJ. Keep going, DOJ. I, for one, am really happy with what DOJ has done and continues to do in finding waste, fraud, and abuse in the United States government and the agencies and whatnot. Now, there are Kotex is leaving. What? Oh boy, I don't think so. I don't think so. That would be the good news. All right, so I'm going to post these. This is one. If you are taking a blood pressure medication called, let me find it here, carvedilol, there's been a recall on this, and this was published on Wednesday, and carvedilol is being recalled. It has something carcinogenic in it, and has elevated levels of a type of carcinogenic substance. I'll say that word, what I think is right, carcinogenic. So it is, the FDA said a total of 732,960 bottles in various dosages are under recall that was issued on June 4th. So public service announcement, if you're taking that, talk to your pharmacist. Okay, important, talk to your pharmacist. You don't want to be taking any unnecessary carcinogens. This other public health story is about Air conditioners. Roughly 1.7 million air conditioners sold at Costco, Walmart, and Amazon have been recalled nationwide. This is a brand I've never heard of. It's called Midea, Midea, made in China, manufactured by GD Midea Air Conditioning Equipment, located in China. It's a Chinese brand, and they were imported by Midea America Corp, located in New Jersey. They have been recalled on June 5th, yesterday, and because and it's the Consumer Product Safety Commission has issued this recall because this equipment, pooled water in the air conditioner, can fail to drain quickly, which can lead to mold growth. And mold exposure poses risks of respiratory issues and other infections to some consumers. And I won't say to some consumers, to anybody. You don't want to be breathing mold in. So if you bought one of these, and that looks like a through the wall or a window air conditioner, it says the recalled products were sold in Costco, Menards, Home Depot, Best Buy, and other stores nationwide, and online at Midea.com, Amazon.com, Costco.com, Menards.com, Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, BJ's.com, Best Buy, and other websites from March of 2020 through May of 2025, from anywhere between $280 and $500. So if you have one of these, looks like a good unit, but it's going to be one of those window type or air or through the wall. I don't know which. It says it's Midea's U Smart air conditioner that's being recalled, along with a U Plus smart air conditioner, because of pooled water in the units that might not drain fast enough, leading to mold growth. You don't want to be breathing mold. We breathe mold everywhere, but you don't want to be breathing mold that is, especially because of pooled water and things like that. You can actually get quite sick. So those are my two public health announcements. And I would like to say, everybody, thank you for joining me tonight, and have a great weekend. Share the message, spread captive audience around, and we'll be back on Monday. Have a super weekend.